These LEGO Star Wars helmets might be the only sets that I don't break down for parts to use in mocks, and this Boba Fett helmet might be the longest I've ever had a set built, considering it's 5 years old. But over those 5 years, we've seen quite a few upgrades to the helmets. In fact, we haven't seen too many helmets, considering they're only coming back May 1st this year. But Jango Fett's helmet is one of two, alongside Kylo Ren, which is warming on me. But Jango Fett has some really nice improvements that we can carry across back to this Boba Fett and modify it so that if you are picking up the new Jango Fett helmet to go alongside this one, and more importantly, that UCS Slave one, which all three of those are going to look absolutely amazing on a shelf together, because today we're going to be improving the dome on top, the viewfinder, and also the visor on the front to not only look more like Jango Fett's, but also look a little better than 5 years ago. We're going to start off with the visor on the side, which we are taking inspiration from Captain Rex, though I think Jango Fett's finder is even better than Captain Rex's, so maybe we'll also make the same modifications to Rex here. But for this modification, we're going to need a few extra pieces. So as far as changing the side of the helmet, all you're going to need is a 1x2 dark tan tile and a 1x1 plate, which does sound crazy, but we are going to use a few pieces from that old visor. And for the brand new visor, well, you can see the instructions on screen if you do want to pause it. But this rangefinder is exactly how we see the Jango Fett one on screen. We don't have too many elements, so I've gone with an older 1x2 slope, as opposed to the new one that I'm not even sure LEGO have made in dark bluish grey. But this visor doesn't just clip on, because the old one uses a hinge in order to work, which at the time I thought was really awesome until we got Captain Rex. So we're going to use the same mechanism Captain Rex used, and I'm sure Jango Fett uses at least a very similar one. But for this, we're going to have to pop off the side of Boba Fett's helmet, otherwise it's just impossible to work with. Whilst we're here, I would also like to mention the fact that there is so much space on the interior. I'll definitely be sneaking a minifigure in there, but by popping off the back, LEGO could have even hinged this. They could have built a little scene, which is something I really want to see for the future of helmets. Maybe not even a minifigure, maybe just a little Slave one on the inside would have been really, really fun, especially when this set come out. But LEGO, you can always start now. In order to get this to work, you're first going to want to remove these 1x2 cheese slopes, which are going to be used later on in the build. Likewise for these 1x2 red plates either side, and whilst we're at it, we might as well remove that bottom jumper. Now we've almost got that blank canvas to work with, we're going to want to start with our extra pieces that we're picking up. That 1x2 tile and that 1x1 plate will go next to each other just at the bottom here, and this will be our stopper for when the rangefinder is pointing upwards towards the top of Boba's helmet. From the viewfinder, we're then going to want to grab this 1x2 tile just on the bottom across both of these jumpers, but the rest of it can go to your parts. This tile is going to go just on the right hand side of everything else we've been building, and then in the middle we're going to want to return the 1x2 jumper. You'll notice there is a 1x1 space on the left hand side. Don't worry, we'll fill that in a second. But first off, we're going to grab our helmet, place this right back, and you can see that 1x1 lines up with a 1x1 black tile just on the top there. We're going to want to pop that right off, and now we've got space for that other 1x2 jumper. Again, that's going to act as a sort of stopper for our viewfinder. As far as getting this built, you could probably see most of the elements used. This has been built upside down, so these are the bricks in their correct orientation, but I'll leave the instructions for this over on the community tab. I'll link it in the description if you're coming back later. You can see this 1x2 slope on the side here isn't as nice as if it was fully tiled off, and whilst I could have 3D printed a custom element or perhaps tried to hunt down this very rare colour for the piece right now, this piece comes in an abundance of sets, especially themes like power miners. Now the studs make sense. You can see that middle stud holds the viewfinder, we've got the bottom stud holding it in a vertical orientation, and then when we turn it on its side, it's stopped by this stud here. Yes, just before we equip the viewfinder, there is one more modification we need to make, and it's getting rid of this 1x1 right at the front. It is in our way for this change, and doesn't make much of a difference as far as the style of the helmet. If anything, adds a bit more depth to the corner of the visor here. And finally, it's time to place the viewfinder on. We place it on that middle stud. It's held vertically by the stud on the bottom, and then we can rotate it 90 degrees so that it's actually in line with Boba Fett's visor and not slightly above. The only thing I would have loved to have added is some sort of printed or decaled element just on the front of the visor here. But besides that, this thing is absolutely perfect. So we've now got the visor, but why would we stop here? The dome of Jango Fett's helmet uses a few different 1x2 slopes and even 1x1 cheese wedges to give a bit more of a rounded texture and less bricks, though I do really like the fact that LEGO are keeping studs on the top of the helmet. Otherwise, you might as well be buying a model kit, which is so much cheaper than LEGO. The studs is what we want, which is why we pay so much for them. To modify this, I'm only going to do the front and the left hand side because the right hand side already has a load of jumper tiles and plates, which make it look a lot smoother than the rest of the helmet, and personally, I like it too much to change it. The change we will instead be making, you can see right at the front, there are two of these corner plates under each side, and we're going to want to remove those straight away off the left hand side, and then the right hand side is merged with this 2x2 plate. So keep that at hand and replace this 1x4 with those two corner tiles so that they're facing downwards. Just like so. We can then return these two other corner plates to the front, and we've got our space either side for those 1x2 slopes. In order to attach those and also get this 2x2 back on the other side, I'm going to use that 1x6 we've pulled off to stretch right along the bottom and also connect up with the first corner plates we put on, and then we've got space either side for one of those round 1x2s, and there's a second. Now, it also gives us some space at the top. You can see either side we've got a 2-plate jump, and that's where we're going to be placing our 1x1 cheese wedges. Before we place this on the helmet, you might run into a little issue with this 1x2 white grille. So remove that, and the front should slot on just as easy as it came off. And already it's looking a lot more like Jango Fett. The big problem though are these two 1x8 tiles left in the middle. Before we tackle that, we do have another 2-plate jump just on the other side. So if you do have a third 1x1 cheese slope, which if you do have two of them already, I'm sure you've probably got one that was spare in the same set on the side, rounds it off just as nicely as it does the front. The visor isn't too hard to change, but there are a few steps. You're going to have to stay with me here. First, remove the left and the right side of the visor, as well as these little 1x2 dark red slopes that we're not going to be using, so they can go straight in your parts bin. As well as that, we're going to be popping straight off the nose of Boba Fett, which needs to be made much shorter. And whilst we're here destroying Boba's helmet, there's a 2x4 tan plate, which later on you do get a spare 2x4 black plate. I would definitely recommend changing that to black, just so it doesn't seep through any cracks we're left with. As far as extra pieces go, because we're doing this to both sides, you're going to want to double everything that I show you. For the left side, we're going to need one 1x8 door rail, two 1x2 door rails, a 1x2 dark red bracket pointing upwards, a 1x2 dark red cheese slope, a 2x2 underside round tile in absolutely any colour, and it's one of the ones that looks like a Milky Bar button. And then this is completely optional, but I would also recommend a 1x1 dark red stud. Round or square, doesn't matter, but if you would like this to be absolutely perfect, I'd recommend going with a square one. Now, the first modification we're going to make is to this middle platform here, and is actually where we get a lot of our parts back that we're going to use later on. So popping off the left hand side and right hand side completely, we're going to add the right hand side to our pile for later, and the left hand side to all of the parts, which we're not going to use them all, but it's nice to have around. We're then going to pop off the two 2x4 tiles and add on our 1x8 door rail. If you want to get ahead, you can add the right one now, but we'll come back to it later on just so you don't forget. The two 2x4 tiles go on top of that, and now this is the size of our new Boba Fett helmet nose. And not only that, but we've also built out these tiles one extra plate to add that extra bit of dimension to the Mando helmets that do slightly lean forward. This nose does clip straight on where it was with no more modifications, so you can place it there ready. And it also helps us to guide in this left panel later on. For the left panel, first make sure you've got the right panel in hand. No, the left panel, which is the correct panel. And you basically we're going to want to tear this whole thing down. This is where I'd like to point out that LEGO don't always use legal techniques, as there's an illegal technique hidden in this Boba Fett set. If I place on the side panel with only the 1x4 bent slope, you'll see that the 1x4 panel pops off because there is no way this fits with this hinge combination on the side of Boba's helmet, which is why it's been overlapped with a wedge. LEGO thought we wouldn't notice, but yes, LEGO Boba Fett's helmet, if built based on the instructions, is an illegal LEGO set. It shouldn't be possible because of these 1x4 rounded off slopes on both sides. You can chuck this one straight in your bin because we're definitely not using that. And speaking of not using sets, here's where you can get your 2x4 black plate that we did replace on the top of the eyes. But remember that side of the nose we pulled off? Well, we're going to go straight to it because underneath here, we not only get the 1x8 tile we're going to need on top, but also the 1x8 plate and a 1x6 plate all in dark red. So LEGO nearly had enough elements to do this mock using the original set. We're also going to be taking our extra 1x2 door rail and the second 1x2 black plate. The first one is a part of this panel, so make sure you don't lose no pieces. Now we've got everything ready, let's start putting this thing together. We're going to start by removing that 1x4 green plate, which makes not just one, but two and three 1x4 green plates that we don't need in this set. And I'm sure the others could have been replaced with like 1x2s. But that gives us space to move the 2x6 and 2x4 plates down, and that's where we're going to be placing our first black plate. There's a stud on this shield, which by the way, dark red for this shield is a very nice color. If you do own a few of the battle packs, replace it with grey and you've got two really nice dark red shields to add to your Coruscant or 95th Legion of Clones. On top of this, we're going to grab our 2x4 wedge and place that right on top, filling up not the entirety of the top because we still have that 1x2 we need to make space for. The wedge does overhang by one stud, which is where we connect our 1x8 dark red plate, filling out that gap with not only the 1x6 but also that 1x1 from our own parts collection. Straight away that can be covered up with the 1x8 tile, and then just below it we're going to place that 4x4 rounded plate element. I have no idea what to call it. To secure this all in place, we're then going to use the other wedge over the top of it to look a little bit like how they've styled the Jango Fett helmet. And now we turn to the back to add a bit more support onto this, so grabbing our 1x2 plate and also the 1x2 dark red bracket, you want to arrange them in a way they fill up the 2x3 just above that shield element, and then lock them all in place with that button. Whilst we're here, we might as well secure this 1x8 plate with another button as well, just to soothe anyone's worries about it eventually falling off. The back of your panel should now look something like this, which is where we're going to add our 3 1x2 door rails to the opposite side to that dark red plate, so we can fill in the gap as we are shifting this entire thing over by about half a stud. To fill in the gap at the top is where our 1x2 cheese wedge comes in handy. Laying this panel flat, you're going to want to stick this to the bracket with the flat side on top. And now the only pieces you should be left with are 2 1x6s, a 2x4 that you can again use on those eyes, a 1x1 in black and grey, and then also a 1x2 angled wedge slope that is the only piece you're going to want to keep around. This panel can now pop straight onto your Boba Fett with no problems and looks a little sleeker than it did before. I'm aware not all of you can follow worded instructions, so let's take a closer look for the second side. To get the same effect on the opposite side, we first need to pop off this nose yet again, and for that you are going to want to remove the panels on both sides. But the piece does pop off very nicely. It's only held on by these 8 snot studs. And bringing in our extra pieces, we have this 1x8 door rail. We have 2 of these 1x2 door rails. All of these should be fairly common pieces. I guess they don't have to be in black. You could probably get away with using a dark bluish grey. And then we've got our 1x2 dark red bracket here. You can see it's the one that points upwards, a 1x2 cheese slope which might not be the easiest, this can be replaced with two 1x1s and that 1x1 plate, which you could use a 1x1 corner tile rounded off, 1x1 half tile, half rounded. There are so many elements you could exchange these for. These were just the easiest ones I could find. Back to our nose, we are popping off those tiles. We've already removed this bar off the left hand side all the way down to that black 1x6 and that 1x1 plate. Though if you don't want to take off the 1x1 plate, you could leave it there, but why would you leave an extra part laying around? That might come handy in a future set modification, who knows. We're grabbing the 1x8 door rail, placing that on the top. This is to completely finish the nose, so once this is ready you can pop that straight back on the Boba Fett helmet. And now it's time to pull apart the left panel, or the right panel, Boba's right, our left. Either way, we are pulling this completely apart. You already know some of the elements that we won't be using, but I do try to repurpose as many of these elements as I can. The first piece to go is again that 1x4 plate, and then we can shift the 2x6 panel down and the 2x4 panel. So your build should be looking a little bit like this. This is where we can take one of those 1x2 black elements and place it just in that gap, fill in a hole. We're going to go straight into this 2x4 wedge, place that on top, so we've got again a 1x2 gap just in there. And keeping up with how I built the other side, we're taking the giant brick of plates that we took off the nose, pulling this apart. We're going to want the 1x8, the 1x8 plate, the 1x6 in dark red, and this 1x2 plate and 1x2 door rail. And then those two 1x6s can go to the side. That 1x8 dark red plate goes on the underside of this wedge just here. And like I said before, for that added support, grab some of these little 2x2 round buttons and we'll place one just on the back, covering all three of these plates. You then want to grab the other dark red plates, all of them to fill out this middle bit here. And it doesn't matter whether you put the 1x1 at the bottom or the 1x1 at the top, but I do like spacing it out because from the side on, it looks like we've got a 1x1 on the top. And then we're going to cover this with the 1x8 tile. To make this all feel a bit more secure, we're grabbing this big 4x4 black plate, placing that on top and locking it in with the slopes with this 2x4 wedge in the opposite orientation. Something I didn't tell you about the other side was this extra piece we were leaving laying around. And that is because originally this piece goes on the left hand side of this panel and the right of the other, which means it's not the correct orientation for this centerpiece. But if you do want to swap them about, you can place it just in the middle here and have it angled so that it's coming in just that extra bit nice. It doesn't match up with this rounded off slope here at the top, and perhaps some of you will prefer to leave it off. But I do think it looks a little better than just leaving that 1x1 stud overhanging on the end. So whilst we're here, we might as well do it to the other side. There you go. Make sure both of those are lined up and matching. And once you've built one of these, it's pretty easy to build the other side. Well, easier than it was at first, I guess. Flipping this over, we can add our bracket just on the side of this wedge here. And then that's where our other 1x2 plate goes. You can see alone, it's very loose and is very prone to falling. So we're locking that back in place with an understud. You probably could get a 1x2 plate in the middle there, or another 1x2 something with two studs, maybe even another door out. But this rounded off tile is a lot thinner than any sort of plates at the edges, so it allows it not to bump into any other sides of the helmet. 3 door rails just on the side here, and these will be filling in a nice little gap where we have shifted this in just a little bit with the thinner nose. And then we've got this 1x2 cheese wedge that goes on the top, pointing upwards away from the door hinges. And again, these 3 elements aren't needed. Bringing back in Boba Fett's helmet, we can place both of these on either side and they slot in fairly nicely, a lot more secure than they were before. And I do think that removing that little wiggle room has definitely benefited this helmet. And there we go. We have our updated Boba Fett helmet that looks a little bit more like his father. I think the best thing about this modification is the lack of complex pieces used, which means this is really easy to do and not need any of the extra plates and tiles that we've used for any other mock or larger scale build. I'm also really intrigued to see how the build for R2-D2, which we are building live here May 4th, don't miss out, as well as going live Saturdays and Wednesdays now. How the R2-D2 build compares to the build of these helmets, and would we be able to sneak R2 and Malak inside R2-D2? But if you did enjoy this modification and are giving it a go yourself, smash a like on this video. Are you picking up Jango Fett's helmet, or would this look good with the old UCS Slave one? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, may the bricks be with you always.